So, how does a guy who knows nothing about the three-act structure, really nothing about Hollywood, wind up in Hollywood and within less than really a year, wind up as a fellow of the Motion Picture Academy? Well, it's a very improbable story. And it really started that I was looking around. I owned newspapers in Oklahoma, which were doing fine, and I had brought in new management, which I did every few years, and was in the process of clearing out. The principle here is you get good people and you get out of their way and let them run your business, but that isn't to say you don't watch them and support them and do one another, but you really don't want to be in there every day, and you don't want to be in there sometimes every week or two. You look at the results, and you want a good newspaper, and you want to make a buck, okay? And if you did that, then I went on with my life on essentially private welfare. And so I was looking around. I had been just very shy of getting a master's degree in journalism at the University of Missouri. When I had left and gone to work for a television station in St. Louis, NBC, Channel 5, KSD TV in those days. And so I considered going back getting my PhD, which really means you wind up teaching, which I really kind of didn't want to do. Which is why I left, went over to TV. Then I went out to Stanford, and I thought, well, let's get a master's or a MBA. And so I spent some time visiting with folks out in Palo Alto, and these guys at that business school at Stanford were like eating turf builder for breakfast. I mean, these guys had a very different philosophical approach to business than I had, which is, you hire people and you pay them as best you can, and you be supportive, and in the newspaper business in those days, the business is going to grow, and you could convince yourself that you're really a smart guy, which I was lucky, but I wasn't all that smart. So anyway, that led down to Hollywood, and soon enough I met UCLA Extension, and they had a great program with a lot of different things, and I took a class with a fellow by the name of Rick Middleman. Now, Rick was a great guy, and he became a friend. He's gone now. Everybody I knew in Hollywood's pretty much gone now. But Rick had written a whole lot of the sitcoms, including one that I absolutely adored and it kind of never went anywhere, which was My World and Welcome to It, around 1970 or so. And Rick had won an Emmy for it, and was now teaching, filling in because he's still making a buck writing, and he's a very great writer. And so I took his class, and we became friends, and he was an encouraging guy. We wound up doing lunches and hanging out quite a bit later on. And then the second class I took was with a woman by the name of Linda Palmer. And Linda, I became not only good friends with, but we became writers together, and we took stuff to 4 different sitcom presentations to CBS, and she was my forever mentor and really forever friend in Hollywood. Linda had been married, believe it or not, to 2 different heads of the studios, and Linda had been the head of production at TriStar Pictures and was very wired in. And almost immediately, she liked the stuff I was doing. By the time By the time I got to her class, I had pretty much finished the first screenplay, which is about stealing oil in Oklahoma. Okay. These guys in Oklahoma, these wildcatters in Oklahoma, I loved them. So I knew a bit about oil theft and oil, these guys are ultimate gamblers. Anyway, so I wrote this screenplay about it was a buddy brother movie. It meant to be a comedy, and it was outrageous. And then I wrote very quickly a second screenplay called Trace, and Trace won the Academy was looking for people to bring in. Motion Picture Academy of Arts and Sciences was looking to it's sort of a new program. They're trying to troll up new writers, better writers, kind of shake up the screenwriting field. And so they just started this fellowship program. So I ran across it, and it was closing in another couple of weeks. They wanted to see an example of your work, and so I sent them well ahead. But then I thought, well, I need another screenplay, and I'm out in St. Louis at a concert with my niece, who was working for a radio station out in St. Louis. And I'm sitting here listening to this music, and I start thinking about the Tennessee Valley and fog and noir, and so I let's write a spy thriller. Now, what did I know about intelligence? Well, quite a lot, but not a lot. I had run during the Vietnam War. I was a captain and an ROTC guy, so I wasn't going to stick around the Army for a career. But I wound up running the intelligence section for about a third of South Vietnam for 2 Corps. And for psychological operations, which is what psychological warfare had been renamed by that time. And in that, and I'd been in the field, and I'd been running into CIA guys and FBI guys who were undercover down in a place called Phan Thiet, Phantiet. And so I know those guys. At least I brushed shoulders with them, and I'm getting, I'm getting these secret and top secret, and I've got this intelligence section. So anyway, let's write a screenplay about these guys, and let's kind of transport them over to the Tennessee Valley, where you got a lot of fog and noir, and it's beautiful country, just absolutely beautiful country, out around Knoxville and so on. So again, see, I didn't know anything about writing screenplays, period. And so I didn't know the beginning, middle, and end, the 3-act structure, and I couldn't even tell you what it was. By the way, it's boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl. Well, they're pretty much the same thing every time. And so I started writing these scenes, and I was living in Studio City, and I had a Mac Plus, I think, in those days, and it sat on the kitchen counter, and I would type away, and I'd write a scene, and then I'd print it on the dot matrix printer, and I would staple it, and I'd heave it over my shoulder. So we get to about a day or two before the Academy is saying, the deadline is. So I go out and I gather up all the stuff, and in this noir kind of stuff, and I put it into some sort of semblance. I print it off, and I send it off to the Academy, and they got 5,200 scripts that fall. We're talking about 90, maybe 91, 1991. And I win. They call me up and they say, Eva Marie Saint, love your stuff. All these guys on this on this committee of people who really know what they're doing, unlike a guy who doesn't know what they're doing. Anyway, and the operative fellow here was a great guy, and he was running the program for the academy called the Nickel Fellowship Program, still around, and now quite distinguished, but it was kind of in its early stages at this point. And Greg Beal was running, been brought in, and Greg told me later that, and he had all these, they're called D girls, development girls, and these are young women who really know the English language and structure and are very good at reading scripts and understanding scripts and so forth and so on. D girl stands for development girl, and they're all very young. They're usually from the Seven Sisters, which is Bryn Mawr and all those colleges out there in the Far East, and they're all very attractive women. Oh, they are. So anyway, these girls would read my script. It's called Trace. Would read Trace, and they go, "No, it's not a piece of junk." And Greg would then grab it and bring it back in. Now, Greg read, and I think he really did, every script that came in. And he did this for as long as he was at the academy. Now he's kind of retired and gone on. But he read Trace, and he liked Trace. And so he kept pitching it back in. And when it got down to about the last maybe 20 or 30 scripts, again, it got kicked out, and Greg threw it back in. And it wound up in the final 10 scripts. And then the 10 writers were invited to write up something or other, but about yourself and why you're doing this and so forth and so on. And so I did that, and anyway, I won. Anyway, they awarded me a fellowship. And then the question became, as now I'm talking to the committee and these people, and they say, well, you know, it doesn't make sense. You're just tell me what's going on here, because, you know, these people are going this way and that way, and somebody gets whacked and somebody gets something else. What's it all about? And I would reply to them as the writer of a movie called The Big Sleep, made in 1946. And that writer, the director called him up one day and said, look, we're shooting a script, but we don't really know what's going on. Just tell us what's going on so we can tell our actors, and maybe... And the writer replied, I wish I knew. I have no idea. And that's what I'd say to them. And the reality was, what is Trace about? And what the hell is going on? Well, I'll tell you what was going on. I would write a scene, and I'd throw it on my shoulder, and so all over my living room in Studio City were these scenes, and I gathered them all up, and I made it into, and off and on and on. And then maybe 6 months or 9 months later, one day I was vacuuming, or somebody was, and anyway, they found a scene that had slid under the couch. And that was what we call Ted the Talking Dog scene. That explained everything. Now, I'd forgotten that scene, and I'd forgotten by that time what the damn thing was about, because by that time I'm in the studio meetings, I'm in the trades and variety, and I've got 18 agents tried to sign me, and by that time, everybody in Hollywood said, whether I did or not, "We love you." That's spelled W-U-V. We love you. We love you. You're a genius. Blah, blah, blah. No, actually, if I'd found that other scene, the Ted the Talking Dog scene, which explained everything, everybody would have gone, God, this guy is, holy crap. And that's how I became a fellow of the Motion Picture Academy of Arts and Sciences. Well, don't try this on your own, because no one was more surprised than me. And of course, I still am a fellow of the Academy, and now I'm a... And Trace, by the way, is still around. Got optioned, unoptioned, loved, unloved. Everybody wanted to make Trace, and we'll tell you about what happened to that after it won, or whatever you want to call it, got me into the Academy. And we'll what happened to that script, and it's still happening every so often, is kind of a lot of fun. But we'll have to get to that another time, and but for now, that's it.